Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Here with us in Studio 3 are two people among 12, or let's say maybe 11, who made the mayoral race something Bostonians can be proud of, Felix Arroyo and John Barros. They join us for their take on how the race went, what direction they'd like to see the race between Connolly and Walsh go, and the direction that one of these two finalists will take the city in. Felix Arroyo is a Boston City councilor. Hello, councilor. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
John Barros, co-founder of Restaurante Cesaria. Did I pronounce it right?
That's pretty good, Jim.
Still not there, but I'm going. A Cape Verdean restaurant in Dorchester. He's the former executive director of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you both for being here. So we're going to start in the backward direction for a minute, looking back at the election. You guys both did well. Felix, you were fifth, and John, you were close behind him at sixth, very close together. How come you're not in the final? Felix, we'll start with you, Felix. How come you didn't make it all the way?
You know, it's the beautiful thing about our democracy, voters make these decisions. You know, you go out there, you bring your message out, and you do the very best you can. And, you know, the voters decided to go in another way, and I totally respect, decisions they made. And I'm just grateful that I was a part of it. I really enjoyed myself. And the ideas around ending poverty and moving families out of poverty and closing the achievement gap and ensuring everyone has a voice in the direction of the city, I believe, still are issues that Bostonians care about. And looking forward to working with the two finalists in hopes that they would speak to those
So
issues.
nothing you're looking back on, think if I'd only done this, if I'd only done that.
You know, I have no regrets.
Okay.
I went in with my eyes wide open. I knew I wasn't going to raise a lot of money. I recognize the role that money plays in politics. I don't like it, but I recognize it. But I knew I wasn't going to, so I really have no regrets, and I really enjoyed myself in the campaign and feel very good about the campaign we ran.
How about you, John?
You know, we had a strategy based on a higher turnout model. It didn't happen. Folks didn't come out. You had the super voters decide the election, and the super voters didn't vote for John Barros. But John didn't think the super voters were going to vote for him anyways, necessarily.
What are super voters?
Yeah, those are the people who vote in every election.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And they came out and vote, and they don't look like John's base. They don't look like the voters that John targeted and spent all his little bit of money on, making sure they came out.
And those people are lower income people, people of color. Is that what you're talking
That's
about?
right, yeah.
Why didn't they turn out? They had 6 candidates of color, a record.
Right.
Obviously, you know that as well, as not better than we. I would argue 5 of them pretty competent people. You two amongst them. Why didn't they show up at the polls when they had a chance to make history?
That's a good question. I think we're going to be asking that question for a while. I've been asking that question, and I get little anecdotal stories from different people why they didn't come out, and we've got to do a better job of turning them out. I don't think we spent enough time trying to turn people out. We were having other conversations that we shouldn't be having.
There was a lot of play given, most of it critically, gentlemen, about a meeting that was called amongst leaders in the communities of color about whether or not any of the 6 of you should drop out to try to help the others. When it happened, Felix Arroyo, here's what you said. I truly believe that if someone wants to run for office, they should. One of the wonderful things about this country we live in, we can freely elect our leaders. John Barros, you said we should be in expansion mode. We should not be narrowing the field. Starting with you, Felix, any regrets that a deal, and I don't mean a deal in a pejorative way, but a deal was not cut where somebody would drop out and endorse another candidate of color?
No. And John's right. I'm a super voter, and I didn't vote for him. I'm really sorry. You're starting to make me feel a little bad about it, but no regrets. No.
Well,
No,
why?
none.
Why do you say it was such a... People can't see your face. You say it with... not quite with disgust.
Because I
but
have
with-
a great radio face.
No, but why do you say that, Felix? No, I mean, it's almost like, of course, why would... I interviewed... I mentioned this to John Barros the other night. I interviewed State Rep Russell Holmes when he was thinking of running for the state Senate seat, South Boston, Dorchester, etc. And he said he was announcing in a couple of days. And at the end, with a smile on his face, he said, however, if Linda Dorsina-Forey decides to get in, we're going to sit down and talk and try to see who's the best candidate. So it isn't like it's some unprincipled act. It's been done through the ages. Why such a reaction to something that a lot of people think is a common sense thing?
I opened the interview by telling you I have no regrets, and that includes staying in the race. I mean, I quite frankly and have no regrets about the campaign we ran and staying in this race. And voters make these decisions. You have to trust the voters, and voters make these decisions. My only regret is that I didn't make the final 2. But that's
But
that
Felix,
I'm sure that's
we
John's
had,
regret.
We had that conversation. We had the early conversation when we were considering running.
Is we the two of
actually,
you?
Yeah, the two of
this
us.
could be a
Are
moment.
you friends, the two of you?
Yeah, we're friends,
Okay.
and we're
Even
closer
better
now.
friends now.
That's right.
Actually,
But we
What
had
was
the
that conversation like, John Barros?
Well, the conversation was trying to figure out, can we both run? Does it make sense? Who's running? And frankly, we came out of that conversation saying we should both run. And Felix was really clear on his conviction and why he thought he should run and why he was running. I was pretty clear on mine, but we thought we had enough space for both of us to run. And what we really failed on in this election was turnout.
You know what I would say too is when John called, and it's funny, I didn't think I had not thought about it till recently, but I had already announced that I was running, and John, as very gentleman act, called and said he's still thinking about it, and I told him privately what I tell you publicly. I said, if you want to run and if you believe that you have something to offer the city of Boston, do it, right? Like, this is so many people come to this country from countries where you can't just run for office, where you can't just vote for who you want to vote for, where you can't just stand on the corner and say, hey, I have ideas, vote for me. That's what makes this country great. I know a lot of those people, and I am not going to participate in anything that would make someone feel bad about voting. They should feel great about voting.
Well, you're a nicer guy than I am. We're talking to Felix Arroyo, city councilor, and John.
Well, you're not a guy at
Well,
all.
I'm not a guy, but you were all in the running. You were in the running, Felix. You were in the running, John. Charlotte Golorich was in the running. I'd be pretty mad at your fellow councilor Charles Yancey, who had no chance and was running for city councilor and running for mayor, because you look at the numbers, and I know you guys have looked at the numbers. You talked about turnout, John. On the other hand, there was, I think, among voters of color, there was like 30 or 30-some% people voted. So the numbers, Peter Galzinas, my colleague at the Boston Herald, did a column on this. If some voters had gone from Golorich to you, or they'd gone from John Barros to you, or some of those Charles Yancey voters hadn't, or Charles Clemens, who had no chance running either, there could have been a person of color as the mayor running, at least. So the numbers were there.
Marjorie, I allow me to just put back just a little
What?
bit. I get the idea had XYZ dropped out, then that person, voters would have gone this way. That's not right. Plenty of white people voted for me.
Right.
Plenty of white people voted for me. Plenty of Asians, plenty of Latinos, plenty of blacks, men, women, young, older, gay, straight, people who have religious faith, people who don't. The idea that we're monolithic in that way, I think, is incorrect.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we've talked about this nonstop since the marathon. Big crime problem that doesn't get the same attention in Mattapan, Dorchester, and Roxbury that it gets in the, they break a window at Beacon Hill. The whole city comes to when someone shoots out a window. So there's an issue there. It's just like in the governor's race. People talk about, well, if Juliette Kayyem runs and Martha Coakley, they're both running, is the woman vote going to be split? I think it's a legitimate point. What do you think?
So I think, there are two ways to look at this. One is through the candidate's lens. The other one's through the community lens, right? And we spent too much time looking at it in terms of like how many candidates. I can't believe the community of color, the black community, can't put forth one candidate. Well, folks, 20 years later, the communities have evolved in Boston in a way where there is no the community of color, the leader of color. We actually have a space where there wasn't consensus. And this is it. There was not consensus in the beginning,
right,
that we had a leader, a candidate that was going to bring all of the issues forward and represent the community. I think it's really a disservice to a really diverse community that's really dynamic with a lot of different views and policy positions to say we can come up with one candidate who was going to represent all of that.
Let me step back then. Rather than asking about your individual candidacies, let's talk about the fact that this is a majority-minority city, obviously, and all of you have looked at the numbers, not just the numbers Marjorie talked about, Mel King 30 years ago, when we were only 1/3 of color in the city of Boston. He gets 48,000 votes in a preliminary against Ray Flynn. Charlotte Golorich, who we invited today, who was unable to come, was on my television show last night. I asked her, what does it say about a majority-minority city that the two finalists are two white guys? And here's what she said last night. Now, Felix Arroyo, Marjorie said you're a nicer guy than she is. You're not nicer than I am. So let me just start with that.
I've never been accused of being nicer.
You
than
mentioned money a couple of minutes ago. Another piece of data that I think may help answer this question, then I want your response to what does it say about Boston in 2013. Every white candidate except Walzak raised more than every candidate of color, including the three of you. Is that one of the issues? And then get to the larger issue that I broached with Charlotte last night.
Yes,
Money is the issue.
That's one.
And is that because
one of the issues?
Yeah.
You know, the way you framed the question, I'm answering it affirmatively. That is one of the issues. And maybe you don't raise a lot of money when you're talking about poverty and closing the achievement gap and everyone having voice and direction of the city. But I have no regrets. Does money matter? Yes. I early on, years ago, I remember supporting the clean elections law because I would love to see money not play a role at all in politics.
So let's leave money. Let's get to the what does it say about Boston in 2013? Majority, minority, no candidate of color makes the final two. Apart from your own candidacies, what's the statement there? Is there one? Charlotte Guller-Ritchie said we have to have conversations. We have to get together, not just communities of colors, but others, intimating at least to me that there is a problem and needs addressing.
Sure, I would have loved to have seen a candidate of color make the final two. In fact, I voted for one. But what I, but there were some positives that we could take out of this race.
What are they?
The fact that there were candidates of color in the race for mayor, running very credible campaigns. That I think communities were excited. Did they come out the way we wanted them to come out? Of course not. If they did, me and John will both be in the finals and having a different interview right now. But it doesn't mean that excitement wasn't there. I have a lot of stories of people who voted for the first time in their lives and voted for me. And I know that John Barros has the same stories. And that's a great thing. And it takes time. And I'm willing to put in that work. I don't know if you heard, I happen to be young. And
34. You are very young. You have a long time to run again.
The kids I coach don't call me young, but that's fine. So, but I have, I'm committed to that. The idea of people being civically active and really voting in their own interest as far as a community and knowing that there are issues we care about. And I think that's going to happen now. John Conley and Marty Walsh, here's one thing I do believe. The next mayor of Boston amongst those two, one of them will be the next mayor. And the one that will be is the one that does the best job of convincing all Bostonians that they represent them. And right now, based on how the vote happened in the primary, the middle of the city is where the undecideds live.
Yep.
And the middle of the city is the most diverse part of our city. The most diverse, economically, by race, by gender,
So
by
they'll
sexual
pick the
orientation.
winner is what you're saying.
I truly believe that. And they got to come to these communities where me and John spent an awful lot of time campaigning and talk about the issues important there. Talk about the 80% violent crime in 3 neighborhoods that you spoke about a little earlier, Marjorie. Talk about our failing schools in our neighborhoods. Talk about affordability issues. Talk about the economy. And that's who's going to win this race. And I think not only win this race based on what you've seen with Tom Menino, the way to stay in office as well is to continue to do work with these communities.
What about what should the guys Walsh and Conley do about this police contract that's gaining a lot of attention now because we're talking about a total about a 25% raise to police officers at a time when things are very difficult. You're in the city council. You're going to have to vote for this, Mr. Arroyo.
Arroyo just took his headphones off and he's ready to
But we'll start with you, John Barros, because you're not on the city council. What should happen?
Well, yeah, I'm not on the city council, but from where I sit, I think I think that contract sounds a little too rich for me.
Yeah.
At a time when we are getting less federal and state aid, at a time when we actually have things we should be investing in, we should be talking to the police about not having us pay that much money for a raise. No one's getting that kind of raise in that kind of short period of time.
And if they say no after you make that request, and it's a similar request to what Marty Walsh has said he would make, John Connolly said he plans to vote no after doing some research. What should the city council do, John Barros?
Vote no.
Vote no.
Before you move off that, you think the cops should have to live in the city of Boston?
I do.
They don't right now.
They don't. Well, they did a 10-year, right?
Yeah.
A 10-year period?
Yeah, you get...
I think there should be two things. One is there should be a 5-year period before you can apply, where you've been living in the city of Boston, and then there should be some requirements for living in the city of Boston afterwards.
Felix Arroyo shaking his head up and down. So, Felix Arroyo,
I just hadn't thought
counsel.
about that idea before before you apply. It's just something that he brought up. and I hadn't thought about.
I just think it'd be nice if you lived in an area that did have high crime to have a couple of police officers on the block. I would feel.
Yeah, just a couple.
I would like that.
Frankly, I growing up in Hyde Park. There's a lot of police officers when I grew up who lived in Hyde Park and felt very safe in those neighborhoods. The question, I do sit here as a city councilor, until the end of my term. I will be, or could potentially be casting a vote unless there's a deal that gets cut here. And the role I would like to play is the same role I played in the firefighter's contract, which was, there was a arbitrator's ruling, and I was one of 3 city councilors who sat in a room and helped renegotiate that deal to something.
You and Mike Ross, who was the third?
And Sal Lamatina.
Sal Lamatina.
Not that I have to be one of those 3, but I'm saying I think the council showed its worth that moment. That was one of the moments, and I want to do that again. Right now, I'm undecided on what my final vote will be, but mainly it's because I have not gone through this arbitrator's ruling. The council's going to hold hearings. I want to hear it out. I agree with the Bostonians who go, boy, that sounds rich. And I
Should there be a vote? Should you guys vote before people vote for mayor on November 5th? Because you technically, I don't think, have to. I think there's a 60-day window, which theoretically could get you past Election Day. Should you vote before?
I understand the question. I even get the political sort of drama and theater around it. The answer to that is no, if it stops the ability to get a real good deal done. We did it with the firefighters. The precedent is there, and I think as a council we should play that role again.
We should point out the reason people say it's rich is because the average pay for a police officer in Boston now is $110,000, which is not a
detail.
Not a bad salary.
But that's counting the detail and
Yeah.
overtime, right?
Hey, John, I want to ask you both. Felix Arroyo said a minute ago what the issues are. He thinks that both Connolly and Walsh have to address to come out of this doing the right thing and being mayor. Same question to both of you. One, are you going to endorse? I don't think either of you have yet. And 2, what do you have to hear? If the answer to that is yes, what do you have to hear Connolly or Walsh say to get your endorsement? Starting with you, John, then Felix, please.
Well, I've sat down with both John Connolly and Marty Walsh, and we've had preliminary conversations just to kind of better understand where they are today and where they stand on certain issues. And, for me, it continues to be about the achievement gap. We need to make sure that every child in the city of Boston has a quality seat in a quality school. It also is about making sure that all of our neighborhoods are strong and healthy, and make sure that people in those neighborhoods have opportunities to get living wage jobs and that they have the benefits that they need to take care of their parents. It also is about making sure that small businesses are thriving in the city and that they're thriving not only downtown but in our small neighborhoods and in different pockets, right? And so it's the issues that I've been talking about. So making sure that government is inclusive and highly participatory. Now, we can all have a voice in city government. Boston is a beautiful place, but we're not all engaged.
But you are going to endorse at some point.
I hope to endorse. We'll see. It's
Are you
not
leaning
clear.
either way yet or not?
No, I'm leaning forward here to my cup of tea.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Felix? Are you going to endorse? And what will do it for you?
Me and John have very similar. Man, maybe you shouldn't have ran.
Maybe we should have held that meeting, figured out
What
who
a
was
terrible
better.
phone call that was when I said go ahead. But no, me and John have very similar ideas around what Boston can look like and what we have to do to get there, and that's what's moving me. It is around the issues of poverty. 20%. This is very serious. We're a city of 630,000 residents. 20%. We're talking about over 100,000 people live in poverty in our city. 40% of Latino children, 35% of Black children, 1 in 3 of all Asians, 20% of the entire population.
Does the middle class care about poor people in 2013? When they're struggling, I don't mean this even in a critical way. When you're struggling to keep your head above water yourself, my thesis is not because you're bad people, not because one is a bad person, but your interest turns inward. You turn to yourself and your own survival, and you have less concern. So it's not.
I get why that happens. Yes, the middle class cares and should care. The stronger and larger middle class is, the better for all of us who consider ourselves middle class. And sort of economic history has taught us that. I'm a little bit of an economic development junkie. It's what I studied in school. But economic history has taught us that when the middle class has grown, it's been the strongest economic times for our country and for all of us. So yes, as to the question, those are the issues that move me. There's no different than what I campaigned on. I truly believe most Bostonians care about those issues.
So you will endorse at some point? You will pick one of these 2 guys publicly?
I'm very open to it, but I have to believe that the one that I'm standing next to, if I make that decision, will work on the issues that I just spoke about.
So what are you going to do in the future, John Barros? You ruined, that you may be the next head of the BRA.
Silence.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, have
Thank you.
I have
Good for
read
you.
that.
You've read that?
Yes, I
I guess I got to give John my resume.
He actually does have a surprised look on it. Is that a real look of
David
surprise?
Bernstein, our own
GBH
unless
Boston
I'm
Magazine
hallucinating, wrote that.
Is
yeah.
that right? So David should tell me then who should I support to be the next? No, I'm surprised. I would love to be the next head of the BRA, but no.
There it is. Boom.
Right. Thanks, Margie. Why don't you broker that for me?
Okay.
But no, the
Let me make sure I'm right. Yes, it is. David Bernstein. John Barros' stock is high, perhaps heading the BRA.
So what
There
are
you
you
go.
doing? Assuming you don't do that, what are you doing in the near future?
I am spending time with my little ones. To tell you the truth, I got
You just had a brand new one,
That's
right?
14-day-old, right? And I am spending time with him, with my 17-month-old, and my wife, and we're going on vacation.
Oh, good for
That's
you.
my next thing, in the Caribbean.
Now, John Barros told us, Felix, he would give us a discount at the restaurant. What are you going to do for us?
I don't have a restaurant.
What are you? So
what am
what's
I going to do? I'm going
Felix,
to
you
go
can
with you
come
the day
too.
you're getting a discount. I'm showing
So,
up.
okay, post city council come January. What's in the cards for Felix Arroyo?
I don't know yet, and I'm frankly relishing the idea that this new chapter in my life is beginning, and really looking forward to it. I'm not. I feel very good about my 4 years on the city council, having passed the Invest in Boston bill, and work around libraries, and very grateful for the time. It's a privilege that's soon going to end, but one that I won't forget. And I'm very grateful for Bostonians giving that opportunity. And I just want to keep working on the issues that I've talked about. And I'm sure there'll be a place where I can find myself happy and working on the issues.
Yeah, one last question for me. I knew your dad, Felix Arroyo, different in middle initial, right?
Yeah,
so you're not a junior,
yeah.
but a great guy, full of enthusiasm. You're a chip off the old block. You are a vision of enthusiasm. Where'd you go to college?
Dartmouth. You're talking to John Barros, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The reason I ask is because
Wait,
that's-
John's dad?
I don't know. The reason I'm asking it this way is because I could see how you ended up in city politics, but you went to a hoity-toity college. Lots of people went on there, masters of the universe and all that, and you came back to the neighborhood. Why'd you do that, John Barros? You could have gone a million different directions.
In fact, the first 4 years of my life, I worked at a corporation, Chubb Group Insurance Company, made a lot of money, sent me to New York. We had a good time on Wall Street. But the organization that I first got involved with at the age of 14, the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, at the core of its mission is the belief that residents, people who live in the neighborhood, particularly those who are most effective, should be the leaders in trying to reclaim and revitalize that neighborhood. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I couldn't believe that I was going to be nurtured by that agency, by the organizations that I was involved in, by the people in that neighborhood, and not come back and give back. And that's something that I always knew I was going to do, and I was really happy to come back and serve as executive director.
Hey, John Barros, City Councilor Felix Arroyo, thanks so much for your time. Good luck in the future. We hope neither of you are strangers here on Boston
Thanks for
Public
having us.
Radio. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.